they got the knowledge you crave. Hard hitting insight gonna make you win. Listen up closely, let the games begin. Top pick sleepers every week I spin. The FF universe here to help you win. The fantasy football universe.
What is up? Welcome in. It is week 13. We need to make our fantasy football playoff push. I am Jeremy Schulman. This is, of course, the Fantasy Football Universe, the double FU, the FU times 2. We are here today to answer your start, sit questions. We've got games kicking off in about an hour. Before I get to one or two questions already in the chat, keep a couple of things in mind. First of all, we have a Discord. You can get all of your questions answered all week long, 24/7. Since I'm over here in Amsterdam, we got a couple of guys on the West Coast as well. So we are covering all hours for you. The link is in the YouTube chat. It's also in our link tree attached to the top of our Twitter page at Fantasy Football Universe. Go ahead and jump on in. We'd love to have you talk some ball. Also, if you haven't used Fast Drive, use promo code FFU. You get a free $25 if you spend $25 for your first time over there. That's enough of that. Let's talk a little bit about this. First of all, Jesse Muller is here. This QR code will take you directly to TikTok to get your questions answered as well. Stop over there, listen to what Jesse has to say, or hang here for a little bit. Stop over there, but come back here as well to make sure that you get any and every question you have answered ahead of the slate today. Frosty, I see your question. Thanks for joining. Give me 30 seconds just to run through the inactives and actives that we care about. Not that you're really starting him, but Aaron Rodgers will play. Not that you're probably starting him because of the injury. I'm a little concerned, but Baker Mayfield will play despite everything he was going through last week. Now, this could be a gutsy, gritted out Baker Mayfield game, but just kind of given the matchups and the state of the injuries, these guys, I'm staying away, especially in one QB. Hopefully you have some better options. Bucky Irving on Baker's teammate, his first game back. It have said earlier in the week that he may be limited, so just keep that in mind. It's very possible that he does not have his full workload. Now, against the Arizona Cardinals, I am not necessarily concerned about that. If you have to play Bucky, he rounds out into a back-end RB2 for me this week because of his potential to score a touchdown, but he's a concern. Other guys who we were expecting to play, like a Trey Benson and Marion Hampton, those guys will not play. So, of course, you have Bam Knight, who becomes relevant. Michael Carter is fine. I'm not really excited to play him, but I will play Bam Knight. And then, of course, Kamani Vidal becomes nearly an RB2 for you. You can flex all of these guys, but hopefully you don't have to, because hopefully you're healthy enough with 0 bye weeks to avoid these guys altogether. But if you were healthy enough, we probably wouldn't have to have shows like this. All right. That's plenty of that. Let's talk about a bunch of this. Frosty, what is up? Thanks for joining us. Browns or Texans D this week? It's an interesting question. And of course, the weather was supposed to be a factor in Cleveland. Looks pretty clear right now. It might be a little bit windy in terms of gusts, but otherwise, I'm not too concerned about this impacting the game much. I think Brock Purdy is going to be a lot better than he was last week with those 3 interceptions. Now, will he get sacked a ton again? It's very possible. He's got the sack leader, Myles Garrett, who's set to break the record of all-time sacks in a season, probably in 16 games, let alone 17 games, tracking him down. So in terms of the Cleveland D, I have them a little bit lower than I think I probably should. They're at 13 right now, but I have Arizona ahead of them with the Baker injury. I have the 49ers ahead of them in the same game. So I have Cleveland at 13. I can move them up to 11. I think I will. So, yeah, I feel good about those sacks, but the Texans are going to absolutely rake. I have them at 7. In fact, I'm moving them up to 6 ahead of the Atlanta Falcons. So I still have the Texans about 5 spots ahead of Cleveland, Frosty. And the real reason for me there is Daniel Jones with the fractured fibula. I believe that's what it was. Anyway, he's got a fracture in his leg and he's still playing. He's going to be completely immobile. Certainly, they're going to run the football a ton. It's going to slow down the game script. I don't think the deep ball will be there anyway, but Daniel is less than mobile. Danny Dimes is going to struggle here, I think, and this whole Indy offense I expect to struggle as a result. I'm going the Texans D by a lot. I expect them to have a very good game, and certainly both of these defenses can keep up with each other in the sack department. Dynasty Dogs, Mr. Mike, what is up? Welcome in full PPR. We got Bucky or Courtland Sutton. Yeah, this is the type of question that we need to be asking ourselves today. How much is Bucky going to play? What do we believe? Because Courtland Sutton is the number one option, maybe not the number one fantasy producer at wide receiver. That's Troy Franklin, but certainly the number one option in his offense. And he's going up against a Swiss cheese defense in the Washington Commanders who cannot cover a single soul out there. I do like Courtland Sutton this week. I think he's going to have a decent day. The question is, does Bucky get into the end zone? The question is, do either of these guys get into the end zone? Bucky against Arizona, Walter Nolan out. So I would lean Sutton. I feel like he's just got the opportunity to put up volume. We know that Sean Tucker has looked good. We know that Rachaad White has looked good. And we know that this team is going to have to lean on the run game and the short passing game. So that bodes well for Bucky. But is he able to handle that workload is the question. I guess no. So I will go Sutton. If Bucky's fully healthy, it's clearly Bucky, but we're not asking this question. Bucky's fully healthy. Go with the matchup. Go with Sutton, Mike. I think you'll be happy enough with a nice solid floor of about 10 points and hope for that ceiling. Just to give you a sense of where I have them ranked, I'm pretty sure Courtland Sutton is, 25? Yep, wide receiver 25 for me. Troy Franklin is ahead by 2 spots. He's been seeing the lesser coverage corners. He's been catching touchdowns at a pretty routine rate. He's also got the connection with college quarterback Bo Nix. I do have Bucky at RB20. Let's see if we can get any of the latest news here on Bucky. Derek Brown says, I have no clue how Tampa will deploy their backfield this week. That's helpful. This is from Fantasy Pros and their news and notes. 27 minutes ago, Vince DeSilvio, this is a beat for Tampa, says officially active. He returns. It wouldn't be surprising to see the Bucs ease Irving back into things with a less than full workload. So that's really all we have to go with at this point, Mike. Use your judgment. I don't mind playing Bucky in some scenarios, but if I got a guy like Sutton going, I'm going to play Sutton in a juicy matchup. A couple of things to consider here, guys who are playing who could impact things. Number one, Brian Thomas Jr. is active. Now, Dyami Brown is out, so at least it helps to condense things a little bit, but we got Brent Strange back. We see that he kind of commands a piece of the pie in the passing game. Not only that, we have Parker Washington, who has looked good and who has played well throughout BTJ's absence, and Jakobi Meyers, of course, recently added to the team a few weeks back, being slowly integrated, but he's going to be up to speed, and he's very good NFL wide receiver, probably better than Parker Washington. The question is, who does Trevor Lawrence trust? He appears to trust Brenton Strange, but Strange is good for about 6 targets and really not much more, at least in what he showed this year. He's been able to produce very well as a tight end with that number of targets, but he hasn't necessarily been able to go super nuclear and go elite for your fantasy teams, but that's fine. He's a good play. But then if we think about Parker Washington, Jakobi Meyers, and BTJ, Brian Thomas Jr. just hasn't been able to get on the same page with Trevor Lawrence. Maybe I've said this for weeks now. Maybe it's his usage and his integration in the Liam Cohen offense. Maybe it's a lack of rapport with Trevor Lawrence. Maybe it's the fact that, maybe it's true that, in the first couple of weeks of the season that he was just alligator arming balls out there and not necessarily doing his best and, putting his the most effort forward to catch these balls, especially over the middle, putting his body on the line. He's not doing that. So I'm not sure exactly what to expect in this run out, but I am playing Parker Washington in a couple of spots. Dyami Brown being out also makes me a little bit more comfortable with Jakobi Meyers, but I think this is a running backs game today in terms of what we expect from the Jacksonville Jaguars. In fact, let me just pull up the schedule here just to give us a clear sense of who we've got going. In the early window as well, it's Jacksonville at Tennessee. This game should go in favor of Jacksonville, but we see crazier things in the NFL. We've also got Chris Olave, who was questionable all week with back spasms. Never like to hear that, but he is suited up and set to go. At Miami, it's a great spot for him. Olave and Juwan Johnson are great plays in this matchup. You also got Darren Waller back on the other side, who's very interesting, but he, for me, is a wait-and-see guy, assuming you have better options like a Brenton Strange, for example. You also have New York hosting Atlanta. You have Tampa hosting Arizona, and then Carolina and LA. That should be a complete blowout. It's possible that Tech gets there in garbage time. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm not really scared to start him. In fact, he's my wide receiver 14 on the week against the Los Angeles Rams, simply because I think there'll be plenty of pass volume headed his way. In the late window, we got Minnesota at Seattle. Max Brosmer's first start. That's going to be a little scary. We got Buffalo at Pittsburgh. We got Aaron Rodgers with 3 fractures, it was reported this morning, in his wrist, non-throwing wrist at least, so he will play. And then, of course, you got Vegas headed to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. We like that matchup as well. Denver at Washington tonight. That should be another blowout. Denver should absolutely crush them. Mariota can hang, and you got Terry McLaurin back, but Pat Surtain back as well on the other side. So that doesn't bode well for Washington. And then, of course, the Monday night game, New England hosting the New York Giants. Some people think it could potentially be a letdown in New England, but the home team, myself being a Homer Patriots fan, I'm going to say New England handles the Giants, even with all of those offensive line issues that they have been facing. If you have any questions, start sit for week 13, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will go through each and every one of them here. Also, you notice this QR code. If you scan it, that will bring you to TikTok. You can head over there and get your insights from Jesse Moeller, who will give you as much info as possible. But the chat is always popping off over there, so you can come over here and get your questions answered quickly. Tight end is an interesting situation this week. We have a lot of guys and interesting matchups, and we're kind of struggling out between the Darren Wallers of the world, right? Who to exactly play. In fact, that reminds me, I need to plug Darren Waller rather into my rankings this week because he was missing. Darren Waller is going to pop into my tight end 10 slot. I think because of his previous production, he has looked very good and produced as such. But the real question here is, who are you playing Darren Waller over in what should be a good matchup here at home against New Orleans? Number one, I'm playing him over Oronde Gadsden. The Las Vegas Raiders have been excellent against defending the tight end. And that's kind of more of a recent thing. It also correlates with Jeremy Chin, whether he's in or out of the lineup, and he missed some time in the middle of the season here, a couple of games, and that's kind of when Vegas gave up some points to the tight end. But now they're locking him down once again. The middle of the field is not really where you want to throw against the Las Vegas. You want to hit them on the outside and on the boundaries. That kind of bodes well for the QJs and the Keenan Allens, as opposed to the other. As opposed to kind of some of the other options here. So Oronde Gadsden, I'll fade him a little down to tight end 13. It's not a huge fade, but he also hasn't come through in the past couple of weeks. So that concerns me as well. Something to keep up. Frizzle, what is up? Let's talk about some wide receivers here. Thanks for jumping in. It's Tez Johnson or Jerry Jeudy. Damn, man, I can't play Jerry Jeudy. I get it. But we got some wins now. We got Shedeur Sanders now. I just got to pull this up. I know Jerry Jeudy had that game a couple weeks ago. I know he's been targeted since Stefanski took over play calling duties or gave them up, whichever one it was. To be honest, I haven't paid too much attention because I'm ignoring the Browns for the most part for fantasy, other than Harold Fannin. Unfortunately, I had to give up on David Njoku. But yeah, after the bye week in week 10 against the New York Jets, Jerry Jeudy was wide receiver 14. He had 12 targets, 6 for 78, and a touchdown. You love to see this. You know that Jerry Jeudy is capable of this work. You saw it with Joe Flacco last season. who was able to unlock his potential. But now it doesn't matter. His last two games, Baltimore and Vegas, his 4 total targets, 60 total yards, 0 touchdowns. And that's pretty much that's relatively decent compared to what he's been producing all season. Now, he only had 10 targets in those last two games. Earlier in the season, he was no better than wide receiver 33 through the first 7 games. But he had games with 8, 8, 9, and 13 targets. I know some of that is a Flacco issue. I know some of that is a Gabriel issue. Now we have Shador. Now we have Wind. I just can't play Jerry Jeudy. The last 2 weeks, wide receiver 66 and 69. I won't do it against San Francisco. I'm just not going to do it. So I get it. Tez has more bodies in there. Tez has a hurt quarterback. But yeah, for me, it's Tez Johnson, and I'll try and bank on the touchdown. And just to give you a sense of what we're thinking out there, first of all, against Arizona, he's not going to see Will Johnson in coverage, so that's nice for him as well. He was wide receiver 23 last week. He only had 4 targets, but 3 for 21 and a touchdown. 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games, 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games. Yeah, there's some more guys back, and Baker's hurt. But the nice thing about Tez, as you can tell based on those touchdown numbers, is he's utilized in the red zone. So it's Tez Johnson for me pretty clearly. Frizzle, another one. No problem at all. Jaylen Warren or Vidal. This is an interesting one. The real interesting thing is, how hurt do we believe Jaylen Warren was last week suiting up, right? We know Aaron Rodgers is leading this team, and he fractured his wrist, and he came back after a 1-week absence and was trying to play last week with those 3 fractures in his non-throwing wrist. Didn't end up doing it, but Jaylen Warren split work, just 50% of the snaps last week. He was still 18 for 68 and a touchdown on the ground. Now, I know Kenneth Gainwell got there as well, but there's another good matchup this week for him. So I really want to roll with Jaylen Warren. Kamani Vidal, I have pushed him up, but probably too far for my liking. I know he's practically the only game in town there, which helps. But also when we saw him last against Jacksonville, just 5 for 13 on the ground, just 2 for 2 through the air. And listen to these target totals, because this is kind of what we try to hang our hat on with Vidal and with running backs in this range altogether. In his last month, 2, 1, 1, and 2 targets. It looks like through those 4 games, just 22 total receiving yards. That's not what is going to get it done. Now, Vidal has gotten it done on the ground twice in those 4 games. He's gotten 23 and 25 carries and scored a touchdown in those games. But last time we saw him in week 11, just 5 carries. I don't know what the heck they're doing in Vegas. I know they're going to need to throw the ball, but in LA. I know they're going to need to throw the ball, but they do play Vegas this week. So that lends itself to something interesting. All of that, Frizzle, to say it's a tough one, but I will say this. I will go, because of Kenneth Gainwell and how well he has worked in, I will go Kamani Vidal. I have Jaylen Warren higher, though, at 19, Gainwell at 21. Yeah, I'm going to go Gainwell. It's a super tough call here. I'm going to go Gainwell I'm going to go, you don't have Gainwell. I'm going to go Warren here. And it's Warren because there's been some reports about Jaylen Warren not being fully healthy. This is why Gainwell worked on. Gainwell also ran a super long touchdown in. We saw Kenneth Gainwell kind of push through, and take an entire drive all the way into the red zone. And then they gave the ball to Warren to score the touchdown. So, I think Warren has the better opportunity to score a touchdown. Vidal just 2 on the season on the ground. So that's something to consider as well. Yeah, that's a tough one. But I will go Tez and Warren for you in a great matchup against a rough Buffalo run defense. Good luck to you, my man. Couple of things. If you are joining us, of course, this is the Fantasy Football Universe. I am Jeremy Schulman. You can find all of my rankings on Fantasy Pros as part of the Expert Consensus Rankings. My cohort, or my colleague rather, Jesse Moeller, is right here. If you click this link, you can head on over to TikTok right now. He is live answering all of your questions as well. Over there, it gets a little hectic over there. So just keep in mind, there's a few things that you might want to consider as well. Just in terms of heading over to TikTok. It's the Wild West over there, but we're doing our best to grow that. A couple of notes here and things to consider. Number one, at the running back position, RJ Harvey is incredibly high from me this week. He's my RB 13. He's at Washington. That Washington D hasn't been great. They haven't been fully healthy, but even with Dan Quinn manning the ship there, even with Frankie Louvu kind of back inserted into the lineup again, they really do miss Jeremy Chin in the middle of that defense. And RJ Harvey has proven his worth as a wide receiver in this offense. Now with J.K. Dobbins down, we didn't see the nuclear breakout 2 weeks ago, but I think after the bye here, RJ Harvey is going to be a very, very interesting play, especially with his schedule ahead and especially with his matchup this week. Now, last week, this is the wrong. Hang on, let me get my half PPR league up here so we can get the exact stats. All of these rankings and discussions are half PPR, by the way. Full PPR, of course, changes things a little bit, but half PPR is kind of the standard for how Fantasy Pros does their rankings, so that's why we do it this way. So RB35 last week, we expected the breakout. We saw the breakout in snap percentage. He went up from about, this is RJ Harvey, from about 30% that he'd been averaging through 10 games to 61% in week 11 against Kansas City. Of course, he was needed in the receiving game, but only 3 targets. That's actually down from his usual 4 or 5 targets that he had been seeing. 3 for 20 through the air and no touchdown through the air. He scored 4 receiving touchdowns this season and just 2 rushing touchdowns against Dallas back in week 8. But we know that RJ Harvey can be used in the receiving game. What we want to see is that rushing volume. And against Kansas City in week 11, 11 carries, just 30 yards. So not a good clip, just 2.73 yards per carry. But against Washington, there's going to be a lot more lanes that are opened up for RJ Harvey, and he'll be utilized in the passing game. I expect that 61% to even creep up even further. Bidet isn't doing it for them. I don't even know if he's active. McLaughlin isn't doing it for him. I don't even know if he's active. It's RJ Harvey pretty much and no one else. They're going to be able to throw all over Washington, but I think part of that passing volume goes to Harvey, and he's going to get something interesting there as well. Frizzle, what is up again? Super deepy, nasty question. We love him here at the Fantasy Football Universe. Brandon Cooks or Gabe Davis? Dude, yeah, that's nasty. On the same team, I don't necessarily expect Cooks to come right in and be able to kind of operate within this offense. At the same time, it's not going to be that difficult against Pittsburgh, right? I think Brandon Cooks ends up being the field stretcher. I believe we still have Josh Palmer active. In fact, let me see if I can get the Bills inactives here for you, because this is an interesting one. Oh, this is ESPN. 1 second. Okay, here we go. Game status. So Terrell Bernard is out. We know that, and that's good on the defensive side, because that's going to keep, Buffalo trying to score and potentially airing it out because they're going to get scored on. Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins, their tackles are out. We knew that as well. Dalton Kincaid is questionable but will play. Josh Palmer was questionable but is not inactive at the moment as well. And I believe this is the 1 o'clock game, is it not? It's 4:25. So we don't know for sure. That's really the issue here, Frizzle. We don't have an exact understanding of who's going to play. I'm assuming Kincaid will play. I'm assuming Palmer will play. You got Gabe Davis, you got Brandon Cooks, of course, you got Khalil Shakir. All of a sudden, everybody healthy-ish and back, it becomes very crowded. And one thing we know for sure is that Josh Allen just throws the ball around. So he doesn't necessarily hyper-target one guy unless they're as good as Steph Diggs. And he wasn't hyper-targeting Steph Diggs toward the end there, which is why he left. Gabe Davis's last 2 games, 3 for 40 and 1 for 22. Yeah, I'd probably stick with Gabe Davis just because he's been there longer. He's going to be the boundary guy against Pittsburgh. We don't necessarily want to attack the middle of the field. They got Jalen Ramsey roaming around back there now, converting him to safety. Kyle Duggar also playing a free safety role and condensing the passing offense in the middle. So you can beat this team on the outside, which is really what you need to do. But Josh Allen doesn't need to do anything. He just does whatever the hell he wants out there. So I'm going to roll with Gabe Davis. Could Brandon Cooks have a really good game in his first week over here in Buffalo? Sure. Do I expect it? No. I'll go Gabe Davis, but that's a rough one, my man. Hopefully you got some better options, but I can understand it. 16 team leagues, 32 team leagues, maybe not. Drone Force, what is up? Bo Nix or Jackson Dart this week? Opponent has Wandale. You need upside. I get it. Jackson Dart, you can only rank so low. It doesn't matter his matchup necessarily. The guy's going to score a touchdown on the ground. He's a quarterback 1 for me this week, but he's quarterback 12. I have a few guys above him. I had Jared Goff above him. That didn't prove to be necessarily the right decision because I think Dart does better than that, but I do have Bo Nix ahead of him as well. QB 10 this week. Jackson Dart, QB 12. It's really just the matchups for me. Bo Nix can get there a little bit on the ground himself, but he's got a couple of wide receivers in Troy Franklin and, of course, in Cortland Sutton and RJ Harvey, who we just talked about a few minutes ago, catching the ball out of the backfield. Evan Ingram is sneaky, and they have a bunch of tight ends there. And we know Sean Payton can scheme it up against Washington, who is awful, by the way, on defense. I expect them to do whatever they want. Here are your fantasy points allowed rankings through 12 weeks of the seasons for the Commanders. They give up the 7th most points to the quarterback position, the 5th most points to the running back position, the 6th most points to the wide receiver position, and the 10th most points to the tight end position. The Commanders are just bad across the board. It doesn't matter who you're trying, what you're trying to do on the offensive side of the ball and what you scheme up. It works against the Commanders. Meanwhile, if you just want some context for what we're talking about with New England, you can get there in the passing game against New England, but they are the worst team to try and run against. The 32 of 32 defenses giving up points to the running back position. That extends to the running quarterback. You know that Vrabel and company are going to have a scheme to try and contain Dart because he's really the only weapon. And the only thing that Giants really have going on right now is that run game. It opens everything up. We saw it with Scatterbo because he was a superior back, but we've seen it with Tyrone Tracy, and that helps to open up guys like Wandale in the passing game. Now, you can, of course, pass traditionally on the New England Patriots. They're only middle of the pack, 15 out of 32 teams in terms of giving up fantasy points to the wide receiver position, 12th in terms of the tight end position. And we know Theo Johnson is a good one. So Dart is interesting this week. I just don't expect him off the concussion to come in and run around like a madman again and play backyard ball and throw 3 touchdowns and run 2 in. Could it happen? Sure. He's been awesome. But I think New England will have a scheme and a plan. Bo Nix feels a lot safer to me, and I think he destroys Washington this week. I feel like they're going to, outside of the bye now, they're going to try and make a statement of Washington and prove why they're the worst 9-2 team in history. Is that true? I don't know, but I don't think it's true. I think Bo Nix wants to make a point here. Frizzle, appreciate you. No worries. Happy to help. Good luck to you. Yeah, please sub here on YouTube. Please also over on TikTok. And if you haven't gone there, I assume you might have come from there, but just in case, my man, if you happen to go over there, use this QR code, talk to Jesse Moeller as well. He'll give you the insight that you need this week. And, most of the time we align. Let's see. A couple of other bits of news. Oh, let's stick with that game in New England. I know it's Monday night. But there's some things to talk about, especially the run game with Ramondre Stevenson. I don't think Ramondre has outright lost his role, but I do think Travion has earned more work. So Ramondre's role will be diminished from what we were seeing earlier in the season. That said, though, assuming that man can hold on to the football, he's going to be an interesting flex play down the stretch here, especially with this, this banged up New England offensive line. They're going to need to play a little bit more ball control to win these games and kind of work for that best record and earn a bye in the AFC, because that's really the goal of this team has, especially with that schedule they can get there. So I think it's ball control. I think Travion sees his, of course, and I'm not scared to play him at all, but I think Ramondre becomes viable. Now, he didn't do much last week against the worst run defense in the NFL, but now they play the 2nd worst run defense by fantasy points allowed in the NFL in the New York Giants. I think that's the Patriots' game plan. They're going to try and hide their offensive line by doing some with Drake May, who's been phenomenal, some with Steph Diggs, who I expect to have a good day. But I think it's Travion and I think it's Ramondre this week who really fuel this offense. You'll see what I assume will be a lower scoring game. At the same time, I think Ramondre is flex worthy, but with no teams on bye, you're probably sitting him down, seeing how it's going. But if you really need him because of injuries, I don't hate a Ramondre flex in a pinch. On the other side of the football, Tyrone Tracy, got to play him. Tyrone Tracy is an interesting case. And in fact, he's someone who we've been talking a lot about all week simply because of two things. Number one, because of Devin, Cam Scatterwood going down and Devin Singletary's usage, first of all. And then second of all, Tyrone Tracy himself and what he was able to produce. Devin Singletary with Brian Dable had a good game, of course, where he came in and seemed to lead the team in touches. But in the last 3 weeks, it's been 33, 49, and 30% snap share, depending on the matchup. And like I said, I expect this to be a little bit lower scoring. So Devin Singletary could be more involved, but just 30% of the snaps last week, just 47 yards on the ground last week. Tyrone Tracy dramatically outproduced him. And I think Tyrone Tracy will continue to do that. 19 and 20 carries over his last 2 games. 67, 51, and 71% snap share. He's dominating snaps in this offense. He is truly rounding into form. And of course, he's using the passing game, which is what we love to see. So if Tracy continues to get this running work, these early down run, and controls the state of the passing game with Dart back, I think Tyrone Tracy is a great play each and every week. Plays New England this week, then the bye. But the playoff schedule is juicy. I mean, go out and trade for him in your dynasty leagues. Washington, Minnesota, Vegas to finish out the fantasy season. Tyrone Tracy is an interesting one, not just this week, but throughout the rest of the fantasy season. We talked a little bit already about Darren Waller, but let me give you just a little bit more context about Waller. Waller's played 3 games this season. 3. All right. Week 4, New York Jets was his first game back. He was the tight end 2 in half PPR leagues. 4 targets, 3 receptions, 27 yards, and 2 touchdowns from Tua Tagovailoa. This scheme with Mike McDaniel and Tua both really enjoy targeting the tight end. Also, Waller's faster than most of the guys out there trying to cover him. The next week, the tight end 5 for Darren Waller. 5 targets, 5 receptions, 78 yards, and a touchdown. And then in week 6, he was tight end 18, just 2 for 12, but another touchdown. So look, I don't expect Darren Waller to come out and light the world on fire again, but it's possible he already did it once this season. What I do like about Darren Waller is a good pickup. He's a nice stash. And then he's got the Jets, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay to close out the season. So I do like Darren Waller this week. He's my tight end 10. I would play him over Oronde Gadsden, for example, in a difficult matchup. I would not play him over Brenton Strange in a really good matchup as another example. However, the Jets, Pittsburgh, Cincy, and Tampa for Darren Waller. I like him rest of season. You should go out and see if somebody dropped him weeks ago and doesn't realize he's active today. You can go pick him up right now before game time. Will, what is up? Thanks for joining. We got Bucky, we got Neil, we got Tyrone Tracy. So Devin Neal for me is out. The issue for me is obviously not volume. It's volume in the red zone, short yardage, short down and distance, and goal line work. We know who that goes to. That goes to Taysom Hill. And as much as we hate to admit it, Taysom Hill is back in our fantasy lives again, ruining the value of another back. Just to give you a sense of how involved Taysom Hill was last week, you got to put a bow on this a little bit. Like, he's not someone I'm going to go out and actually, add to my rosters and play this week. At the same time, 10 carries, just 17 yards, but he had 7 carries the week before, week 10 before their bye. So they're integrating him more and more. I expect him to have more and more carries. So look, we know this for years and years with Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill was consistently nuking Kamara's value because he would be used in the red zone and score a touchdown here and there. I think this is another game where Taysom Hill scores a touchdown. That means it could be a game where Devin Neal does not score a touchdown. So I have Neal ranked a little bit lower in the high 30s. Like, I think he's RB 31 for me. Bucky Irving's in the back end RB2 range. I just don't necessarily trust his usage this week. Even in PPR, even in a game where Baker's hurt, even in a game where they're going to have to rely on the run game and the short passing game, it's a smash spot for Irving. Even a game where Walter Nolan is out on the opposing side, who's been awesome in wrecking games for the Arizona defense, I just think Bucky Irving isn't the guy. So that's a long-winded way of saying playing Tyrone Tracy. We just talked about him, Will. about 3 minutes ago. So if you just tuned in, you may have missed it. But Tyrone Tracy for me is getting roughly 60 to 70% of the snaps over Devin Singletary, who's not really an issue. Devin Singletary had those 2 touchdowns a few weeks ago, but since then, it's really been the Tyrone Tracy show. Yeah, so I'm not scared at all. And in fact, I have Tyrone Tracy up at a running back 24 this week. Even in a tougher matchup, I have Devin Neal at RB 32 this week. So that's kind of just the way I lean. Like I said, Bucky for me is risky. You could play him, but I will go Tracy, Bucky, Neal for week 13. Full PPR as well. Tracy is getting that work. Let's see. We talked about Taysom Hill. Let's talk a little bit about Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson in that Miami game. Chris Olave's targets have been absolutely insane. I don't have my numbers on me, but he's definitely top 10 in the league in targets out of the bye of week 11, week 12 against Atlanta. Oh, just another 13 targets for Chris Olave. Just another day at the office, 9 for 70. Chris Olave, when he scores a touchdown, is an elite fantasy option for you. But right now, he only has 4 touchdowns in the season and has only scored in 3 games. I don't think that's going to be a problem against Miami. I think Tyler Shough does what Tyler Shough needs to do and gets the ball to Chris Olave. He's obviously been targeting him. I think Olave breaks one and finds himself the end zone. Another guy who could find the end zone, and again, keeping in mind that Alvin Kamara is out. So Devin Neal, another thing that whole Devin Neal situation could be, could indicate to us is that they're just going to throw the ball more. Tyler Shough can take it and run it, drop back. Obviously, they could do a little bit of RPO. We know that this offense and Clint Kubiak have the ability to fire this up. But in that same game, week 12 against Atlanta, Juwan Johnson, 7 targets, 6 for 46, didn't find the end zone, but was tight end 13. In the 2 weeks previous, was tight end 3 and 8 with scores. So once again, you like his volume. And if Juwan Johnson scores, you're going to be happy with that day. I happen to think this game's a shootout. I think both of these defenses are not good. I know they're not good. But I think that Miami offense with now Darren Waller and Juwan Johnson and the Saints offense are able to put it enough together to approach, if not surpass, the 30-point mark. I would bet the over on this game. Appreciate it for you, Will. Yeah, fire up Waller and hope for the best. I don't have an issue with that, but understand that, you're playing a little bit with fire here. But Waller has done it before, so we're not necessarily afraid of him potentially doing it again. Guys, we got about 20 minutes left to kick off. So if you have any and all fantasy questions, please don't be afraid to just throw them in the chat and we'll talk about it. If you want to head over to TikTok and see what Jesse Moeller is talking about, just click that QR code there and you can do that. And also while you're there, please follow along with the fantasy football universe, both here on YouTube, over on TikTok, and also on Twitter for information and daily live content in your feed to help you win your leagues. Let's see what else we got going on in terms of questions while we wait for some from you from the chat. I think I have an interesting one here. Let's see. All right. We got Steph Diggs. Steph Diggs, I think, is an interesting case because of what's going on with that offensive line in New England and all those injuries. It's going to be really difficult for him to get there. But against the New York Giants, they're not really covering anybody. And I can't remember if Paulson Adebo is out again or not. I think he is. So I'll just confirm that here. Let's accept the cookies, of course. Yeah, for the Giants. So Corey Black is questionable. He might be on IR. Let's see. No, Paulson Adebo will play. All right, so that's interesting. Yeah, I think that Steph Diggs is an interesting play. He can certainly get over. We saw what he's been able to do. But I am just a little hesitant because of this offensive line. Now, I do like him. He's all the way up at my wide receiver 14. I did play him over George Pickens this week in a half PPR league with a pretty loaded roster. So that wasn't great. Pickens got me 13.8 half PPR points. I think Diggs has the opportunity to supersede that, but look, we just don't know. I am playing him over Jaden Higgins, over Woody Marks in that league as well. So I think Steph Diggs has a decent day. It's just a matter of how much can he get off and how much are they going to use him versus a Pop Douglas versus a Hunter Henry, who has a really good matchup as well against those Giants in the secondary versus a Travion Henderson. So I do like Steph Diggs. I do like this offense, but I'm tempering my expectations a little bit because of that offensive line situation. So just something to consider. Will, Strange is available and have Gadsden or Waller. So let me run through this again. This is how I'm viewing the situation with Darren Waller right now. And again, just keep in mind, he's coming back off of injury. So it's always much more difficult to understand just how injured these guys actually are when they come back. I have Brenton Strange up at 7. I can't decide this week between him or Juwan Johnson. I'm going Strange ahead of him at Tennessee in an excellent matchup. In fact, I will give you the tight end fantasy points allowed. The Tennessee Titans actually haven't allowed a ton of fantasy points to opposing tight ends. They've been pretty stingy, but that's really their back end has been good. Now they're hurt. They have allowed it also to the running back and wide receiver you run on the Titans. However, when you talk about Oronde Gadsden, we talk about Vegas. They are even stingier to the tight end. They are the 4th worst matchup by fantasy points allowed. Like we talked about earlier in the show, you get on and over on the Las Vegas defense by throwing away from Jeremy Chin and throwing to the outside of the field, which teams do very well against the Raiders, giving up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receiver. So I think Gadsden, he's kind of a hybrid wide receiver, tight end sort of positional playing. So he has the opportunity to kind of get around that. I don't think that's necessarily a death knell for him, but I do trust Brenton Strange a little bit more simply because he's schemed up in this offense, just like Gadsden is, just like Waller is. So it's really just a matter of how you feel about these guys and who they're going up against. New Orleans, of course, if we look at them, trying to find, they're middle of the road in terms of giving it up to the tight end. But all of these, when we talk about this, right, we say New Orleans is 17th in terms of giving it up fantasy points to the tight end. They're giving up 10.8 points a game. The Titans are giving up 8.7, and the Raiders are giving up 7.5. So we're really kind of, cherry picking stats a little bit and just trying to find the best possible range of outcomes for these guys. But for me, with Brenton Strange, his usage has been phenomenal. We talked about Waller's usage and how he was utilized right out of the gate when he was healthy. Brenton Strange has a similar kind of profile this season. He played the first 5 games, went down the middle of the 5th game against Kansas City. But in his first 4 games, 4, 5, 7 targets. He had no touchdowns, but ended up being a tight end, 18, 37, 10, and 17. He came back last week. For the first time in 2 months, was the tight end 5 for 93 against Arizona of all teams, and no touchdowns was tight end 5, which is very hard to get into the top 6 without scoring a touchdown. Brenton Strange did it. I just think the usage is there. Trevor Lawrence, of course, trusts him and his ability, and he's hyper athletic tight end as well. He's basically a younger Darren Waller. So I'm going to go Brenton Strange. I'm going to trust him over Waller. I'm going to trust both of those guys over Gadsden this week. And that's just kind of where I'm at with it. It's not an exact science, especially when you get into the back end of the tight end 1 range. But the question you have to ask yourself in all of these decisions, especially with tight ends, who do you think has the best chance to score a touchdown? I'd probably give it to Waller, to be fair. But I think Brenton Strange has a good day. Let's see where else we are. A couple of interesting rankings from myself this week. Got Jalen Waddle up at 12. We're talking Miami again against New Orleans. Not a scary matchup. Darren Waller back, opening up the field. Jalen Waddle being his normal waddly self. I think he gets in the end zone, does the penguin dance, and you're very, very happy with him this week. Ted McMillan at 15. That's not abnormal, but what is his matchup going against the Los Angeles Rams, who have stifled wide receivers and pretty much everyone to this point, especially bad offenses. We know they can get after the quarterback and sack Bryce Young. We know Bryce Young has trouble seeing over his offensive line to throw it over the middle of the field, yet Tet McMillan still continues to produce. It's just the fact that he's that good is really the only thing that's propping him up. 2 weeks ago against Atlanta, the wide receiver won 8 for 130 and 2. But last week on 7 targets, just 2 for 35 through the air. But Tet scored a touchdown. So he's the wide receiver 27. He has a safe wide receiver 2-ish floor for you. And I think he has a ceiling, because what I expect is the Rams to absolutely crush Carolina, and then Carolina to be playing comeback the entire game. The Rams are just too good on offense. They're too exceptional throwing the ball, running the football. Be careful. Listen, Will, we all like a little bit of Strange, so don't feel concerned about plugging him into your lineup. A couple other interesting wide receiving rankings. Michael Wilson, wide receiver 16, 1 spot below Tet at Tampa. Great spot. MHJ will play. I don't care. I just think Jacoby Myers is chucking the ball at an unreal rate. And that's really just going to bump both of these guys up. Where do I have MHJ is the question. I think he's buried because he wasn't expected to play earlier in the week. Yeah, he's at 93. We're obviously going to move him up. He's going to be in my low 30s. I will put him behind Juwan Jennings, but in front of Jacoby Myers. So he's my wide receiver 33 at the moment. Marvin Harrison is. But like I said, I've got Michael Wilson all the way up at 16. Now, maybe that's a little aggressive with MHJ back. I can pull him back to wide receiver 19 just to kind of hedge my bets here. But let's talk more about Jacoby Brissett, because that's what we want to know. He's been absolutely chucking it. Of course, you heard 2 weeks ago he had the most completions in an NFL game ever. 47 for 57. This was the huge Michael Wilson breakout as well. 452 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks against San Francisco, a reeling San Francisco defense with injuries, and was the QB4. But don't worry, last week against a pretty good Jacksonville D, they've been pretty good. 33 of 49, 317, and 1. Just still the QB8 because he got 20 on the ground. He was still chucking around. Michael Wilson, another great day. Now they play Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay can't cover anything. In fact, if we look at the wide receiver rankings and see who's giving it up, Tampa is 12th, 28.6 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. We're going to spread that, of course, across 2 wide receivers, because they're Greg Dortch maybe is the 3rd game in town. I think both of these wide receivers have the opportunity to eat. They're also a little bit stingier to the tight end position. Now, we know Trey McBride is going to get his, but at the same time, it helps to understand that these defenses that tend to lock down tight ends, even though we're still playing Trey McBride, it could end up being that Jacoby Brissett goes away from him a bit in heavily covered situations. Maybe he's doubled, maybe he's blanketed, and then you just look to these other wide receivers. So in his last 3 games, 44, 57, and 49 pass attempts, we're assuming those are going to really a pretty condensed target tree. Maybe Michael Carter and Bam Knight get a little bit more involved than usual, but probably unlikely. I see those 3 guys as that tree, and Michael Wilson is potentially second on that tree, at least considering his rapport with Jacoby Brissett. Can he approach double-digit targets again? It's possible. I mean, he's had 33 targets in his last 2 games, 15 and 13. Again, MHJ 18 and 15. There's the math. 15 and 10 receptions in those games. No touchdowns, and still the wide receiver 2 and the wide receiver 10. Like I said, he's my wide receiver 19. I think he comfortably finishes as a wide receiver 2 this week. So Michael Wilson is kind of a must plug and play, even with Marvin Harrison Jr. back. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. We have about 10 minutes left. Also, if you want to head over to TikTok, if you haven't been there, go check it out, and go check out what Jesse Moeller is telling you to do in terms of your start sits. Also, while you're there, while you're here, please follow us. We appreciate you for subscribing, for liking this content. It really helps us out, helps us do these lives both here and on TikTok every single day of the week. So thanks again for joining us. Will, good luck to you, sir. Go set the lineup, go enjoy the games, and hopefully you get another win and are on your way to the fantasy playoffs. Any other questions, drop them in the chat. I'll just take a look at my rankings and see what else is interesting. Look, I'm not going to tell you what to do with Tampa Bay. You have to make your own decisions, but I'm not playing anybody. I'm not playing Baker. I'm not playing Godwin. I'm not playing Emeka Egbuka, who hasn't really showed up in weeks. I'm not playing Tez Johnson if I can avoid it, except under, difficult circumstances. For example, at the beginning of the show, I think we had a Tez or Jerry Jeudy situation. Jerry Jeudy should be on your waiver wire at this point. So that's an obvious Tez. But Cade Otton, you can't play him. And of course, you weren't able to play these guys earlier. And now Baker's got this injury. So I'm just super concerned about Tampa Bay and what they're able to do on the offensive side of the ball today. I think it's probably just some sort of weird committee running the ball a ton and trying to rely on their defense to get the win and really hide Baker and his injury. That's at least what I'm expecting. We don't know exactly how these things are going to play out, but it's very possible. So Emeka Egbuka, my wide receiver 23, I feel like I want to push him down. In fact, I'm going to push him down below Khalil Shakir, but keep him above Michael Pittman. He will be my wide receiver 27 on the week. And actually, you're going to be 28 because I'm going to move DK Metcalf ahead of him. It's just a concern. We were talking about Jacoby Brissett a couple minutes ago. Just keep in mind that he is your play rest of season. A report just dropping now from Ian Rappaport just now. Breaking news says Kyler Murray could stay on IR even when he's first eligible to return, which is next week. Yeah, we expected this. The team wants to run it out with Jacoby Brissett. They're going to use any and every excuse to keep Kyler off of the team and away from the team. For Kyler's sake, for the team's sake, it's just better all around to just say he's injured. This is, this is where this term soft benching that you probably heard from many different outlets has come from. It's Kyler Murray. It's JJ McCarthy now twice, soft bench twice this season. It's a lot of these different quarterbacks who are experiencing this situation. Justin Fields, who's injured as well. Yeah. So it's just better for the team and for the player to just call them injured. Yeah, but I don't think Kyler comes back at all. I think Jacoby Brissett is a phenomenal QB2 for you and a pretty decent QB1. He's been a fantasy quarterback one every single game he's played this season and started this season. So just consider that. He's a really good option, and he's a great option against Tampa this week. Let's look at running backs and just talk about a couple of guys here. Number one, Kyren Williams. People were upset with Kyren Williams. Didn't score a touchdown last week, and therefore his value and production fell off a cliff. You're not happy about that. But the previous 3 weeks, he scored 4 touchdowns. So Kyren Williams scores touchdowns against Carolina. I'm not so concerned. They can be a little bit stingy up front, but it's not a concern with me with this Rams offense. And listen, at some point, I don't want to see it because of all my Devontae Adams shares, but at some point, the fades to the back corner of the end zone or the side or the front from Stafford to Adams from the 1 yard line are going to regress, and we're going to see Kyren Williams just bang in a couple of touchdowns. That happened 3 weeks ago. That could happen again this week in a pretty decent matchup here. So even though Kyren against Carolina isn't a smash play, he's still my running back 12, and I think he finds the end zone at least once. We already talked about RJ Harvey's my running back 13. Ashton Jeanty is an interesting case. He'll get there on volume. The Chargers aren't really a good defense, so I expect him to have a good day. But Ashton Jeanty's schedule rest of the way is awful. But you still got to play him. He's going to get there on volume. It's kind of like Quinshon Judkins this week against San Francisco. Not a bad matchup, especially with all the injuries in the 49ers. But Quinshon Judkins kind of on a bad team with a quarterback we don't know if he's good or bad yet, but he's certainly not great. Shedeur Sanders, 5th round pick. He's going to need time before we know and they know who he is. But certainly this team needs to rely on the run game. So that's another guy who can get there on volume. And then, of course, you talk about Warren, Bucky Irving, Dowdle, another one. These guys are ranked as kind of running back 2s for me this week, simply because of difficult matchups and or volume concerns. And at quarterback, finally, we'll wrap it up here. Matthew Stafford, QB6. Drake May is my QB3. I don't love it because of the offensive line issues. New York Giants actually do have a decent pass rush. They've always had a nice stout front. But I'm going to roll with Drake May. I'm going to stay in the Flames. That man has been balling out this year. If he continues to do it rest of season with the way the offensive line is shaken out and they get the bye, he's going to be right up there in the MVP conversation. I know the schedule has been easier than most people prefer for kind of contending teams to take on. So what? Drake May has been awesome. We love him for fantasy. We love that easy schedule down the stretch. It should be another easy one for him today to put up points. Do they win the game? Some people seem to think it's a trap game. I don't know about that. But regardless, Drake May should score you some nice fantasy points. Guys who are a little bit further down than I'd like. Daniel Jones all the way down at quarterback 22 this week. It's simply because he's playing a ridiculous pass rush in Houston, and he has a broken leg, and he's going to play anyway. But of course, he's still above CJ Stroud at Indy. I probably need to move Stroud up, actually. I'll move him ahead of Marcus Mariota as my QB and Aaron Rodgers as my QB 23 this week, right below Daniel Jones. But CJ Stroud it's been tough for him. That offensive line is awful. If Indy has one thing, they have a stout front and guys who can get after the quarterback. We see Latu doing good things. I think DeForest Buckner is still out. The guys along that line are still able to create pressure. Trevor Lawrence is an interesting name, up at QB 13 this week. Don't love him, but I do love the matchup at Tennessee. So I think he produces for you and you are happy with him. So guys, we got about 4 minutes to kick off. I haven't seen a few questions in a few minutes, so we're going to end it here. Appreciate you joining us. If you're still hanging out, please like and subscribe here on YouTube. Please head over to TikTok as well. Talk to Jesse Moeller, see what he's saying a couple minutes here before kickoff, and follow us there. We're really trying to grow both of these channels for this year and beyond. So thanks again for joining the Fantasy Football Universe. Good luck to you today, Will. Good luck to all of you out there. And we will see you next time.
FFU. FFU.